A hobby funding a hobby? Sounds like a cool concept. Today, I wanted to tell you about that, about my own personal experiences, about what I've learned from others in this community, and what I've started doing myself. And how, after many years, I've reached a point where cards are no longer such a very heavy budget expense for me, but rather, consistent and good decisions made over the years allow me to enjoy this hobby and, at the same time, build a collection that also serves as a kind of investment after all. What does it look like, and how do you even get started? After all, we can all see how much Prismatic Evolution and Ascended Heroes cost. Prices are totally detached from the MSRP. You can't buy them at normal prices. Actually a very, very expensive hobby, burning money. So at that point, it almost feels easier to just find an excuse to quit this hobby. Sure, if cards are basically what I just described, well then I see those people who show up, open a few boosters, enjoy those cards, start complaining about all sorts of things, and quit as a kind of tourist in the card hobby in general. And it's good that we have tourists in the card hobby, because when tourists show up, bring in their capital, have some fun with it, but don't treat it in the context of building their collection wisely, well, they actually leave a lot of room for those people who have more time, approach collecting in a wise and responsible way, and do it so that they can enjoy this hobby as much as possible. I started my own journey with cards when I was 9 years old. That was already well over 2 decades ago. And as you can imagine, as a 9-year-old, I didn't have a huge budget for these cards. I looked for all sorts of ways to use the tools and opportunities available to me to allow myself to get as much joy as possible from this hobby. Because from the very beginning, I was really into the competitive scene. I wanted to play in tournaments. I wanted to travel to those tournaments. That, of course, happened much later. I didn't go to Pro Tours or Grand Prix as a 9-year-old, but as a teenager, I tried to find as many opportunities as possible to play these cards, to collect them, to put them in a binder, to trade them and enjoy them, because it's been my main hobby for many years. Through these cards, I actually met a whole bunch of really close friends and coworkers, and I think it's just a phenomenal and amazing community. And it was this community that showed me a few tricks on how you can use your collection, your time in this hobby, to fund what are, after all, often quite significant expenses. Especially if someone is a TCG player and travels to tournaments. To other countries, to other continents, well, tickets, stays, food, tournament costs, those are all incredibly expensive things. And sure, some people can afford it, but can students, hobbyists, or just your average office workers afford it? Probably not, if they approach it strictly from an outsider's perspective. So how can you approach it differently? I learned about the link between card value and financial value very early on, for the exact reason I mentioned. Life kind of forced me into it, so that I could actually stick with this hobby for the long haul, and enjoy playing and traveling. As for decks, well, you had to expect that it would be a relatively large expense. When I started playing back in the old extended format in Magic, the cards needed for a deck often exceeded 20, sometimes even 30 euros. Well, those are significant expenses after all. So what can you do to find some money for a hobby like this? Well, the first thing, which is obviously a no-brainer and is very easy to implement, even for, say, beginner players, is first and foremost taking care of your cards. Even something as simple as a binder or card sleeves already provide protection for those cards and help preserve their value. How many times have we seen bent and crumpled Charizards carried in pants pockets while playing soccer? Exactly. If those players and collectors hadn't played soccer with them, but understood that for things that have collector value, regardless of whether someone is a player, likes these cards, or simply collects them for the art, I think no one would argue that both the card products and the cards themselves have value. And it's worth taking care of it, because otherwise we're just burning money in this hobby. The second thing that's very important if you want the hobby to fund itself is a certain understanding of the collectible and playable value of different cards in various card games. For example, in Magic, after playing for a few years, You can spot in new sets cards that could likely be necessary pieces of the puzzle in various decks. And if the price is a bargain, it often turns out that buying cards relatively early allows us to enjoy them longer. But not early in the sense of pre-orders, because that's exactly an example of not respecting money in cards. Buying singles for Magic at massive peaks 2 weeks before the release. No, that way your collection won't grow wisely, and you won't be collecting wisely. If you collect wisely and want to play at the same time, then your fellow players at LGSs who follow this hobby will probably recommend that it's best to just wait for a moment after the pre-release, 2 or 3 weeks, when people have opened those boxes, have those cards, and want to get rid of them. Then, both in LGSs and on marketplaces, you're able to get those cards practically at their lowest points. But there are also tricks like, for example, cards before rotations. Rotation is, to my knowledge, an element that occurs in every card game. It's the moment when the pool of available cards simply changes in the main format, whether it's, I don't know, standard in Magic or standard in Pokemon. When cards rotate, many of them simply become nearly worthless because the people who had them in their decks just want to get rid of them. If we are conscious collectors and players, we understand which of these cards have additional uses, beyond the value they had in a deck that may no longer be able to use them. This is just another cycle you can use to pick up some cards that might be good in Legacy, maybe good in Commander, or maybe have only a small chance of being reprinted anytime soon. Because, for example, they have some mechanic that might be hard to reprint in a new expansion. And as we know, master sets are not really something that Wizards has continued in recent years. Alright, so we already have card care, and we understand cards from the inside, and we understand how and when to buy them, when to hold them, and how to make money on them. Of course, there are also trading elements, let's say. Let's consider this an extension of point number 2. The trading side of it was that when I was little and I knew that some card, I don't know, Grim Lavamancer in Torment cost about €6, then if someone, for example, after a tournament, after a draft, was ready to sell that card for €3, well, I knew that taking that card for €3 would probably quickly find me a customer at the next tournament for those €5, and I'd put those €2 back into my gaming budget. This is also an important element of this whole card experience, and even if someone is basically a card trader, they often perform such operations precisely to partially finance their hobby through their hobby. But all the things I've said so far are more like basics. However, in my opinion, we have on this market not only this kind of advice that already worked 20 or 25 years ago, but we also have a cheat code. A cheat code that is clearly visible in the data from 30-year-old card games like Magic and Pokemon, shows that access and understanding of which card products can become powerful stores of value, that is exactly the cheat code for how to ensure a large injection of money to manage this hobby, but also to build that collection over the long term. And now, this is not investment advice. It's not as simple as, let's take out a loan, take all our credit cards, buy up Pokemon boxes, and sell at the peak. Sure, that might work sometimes, but those who have been around for years know that this market has a very cyclical nature, and anyone who has never failed on some speculation, and I have failed, well, only those who are battle-hardened know that we must have thick skin and simply understand, as Warren Buffett said, if we buy land, it's not to sell it 3 weeks later because it drops 2% in value. And what am I even talking about? Of course, I'm talking about sealed products, especially boxes. Mainly booster boxes, because booster boxes in all card games are basically the foundation of how cards enter the market. What cheat code is hidden in sealed product? Data, if you analyze it, sit down with ChatGPT, with any other LLM, Claude, whatever, and check for yourselves what happened with the prices of sealed products. Especially good and popular releases, Magic sets and Pokemon sets, primarily these two card games, because they are like the blue chips of our hobby, what happened year after year with the transaction prices of these card games. And if you take a look, you'll see how it works. It also works because these sealed products, as we've often said, they have their printing cycle. Print run, print window. As long as they stay there, these products can appear on the market. And their price depends heavily on distribution decisions, reprints, and how long they stay in print. We have to realize that. However, we also know that these card games have a model where they don't print things forever, only until they exit that reprint window. They stop printing these boxes, and there's a finite number of these boxes. Plus, these boxes are bought by various people, collectors, rip and ship streamers, all sorts, even tourists, whom I mentioned earlier. They buy these boxes, they open them, so I'll leave the math to you. What happens if there are 1,000,000 such boxes on the market and someone rips 3? There are fewer of them. That's the whole secret. This type of product works precisely because it has such a deflationary nature in terms of supply. These products are supported by the large fundamental strengths behind these card games. 30 years of history, giant franchises, and a whole range of enthusiasts and collectors worldwide. Well, these foundations, combined with the way these boxes hit the market, create a small anomaly in the market that collectors often use to fund their hobby. For me, it wasn't even about buying Pokemon or Magic boxes as investments. But when I won them at tournaments, I never opened them because I knew that opening a booster burns money. The expected value of a booster is almost never as high as the booster itself is worth. But there's that fan value, so I often rip boosters myself. And I'm not encouraging anyone, of course, to clutter their closets with gray cardboard boxes without enjoying the cards at all. I love cards, I grade cards myself, I trade cards, I look for cards. It's a fantastic hobby, kind of the essence of what we all like about it. However, if we want to find that golden balance and approach collecting smartly, let's buy one box and open it, and buy a second box to put away in the closet. And if we keep it in the closet, let's not wonder if there's an Umbreon in that Evolving Skies box. I don't know. I don't care. I'm not opening this box, because this box is the foundation of what will, long term, allow me, I hope, until the very end of my life, to enjoy this hobby, to have the opportunity to travel, collect, play, and spend time with friends. And in such a way that it doesn't cost too much money. If we buy one box, 2 boxes, rip one open, buy another, and keep the second one, then the very nature of this market, as long as it doesn't crash, it could crash. Everything could crash. Well, no one guarantees in the Constitution that Pokemon will always be a popular hobby, but if we have such a thing tucked away, then largely, even if we don't want to sell and trade, there's a very good chance, by the very nature of this hobby, that after some time you'll be able to trade such a box for 2 boxes of a new expansion. Even with your local game store. You see where this phenomenon lies? Sit down, take a look, don't take my word for it, do your own research. I've been doing exactly that for many years. Observing, watching my colleagues, applying things I saw working. That made sense. It's also a phenomenal lesson in micro-scale business economics. Everyone in this hobby is a bit of a micro trader. And that's cool, because I really, really like that element of this hobby too. And finally, I'm curious how you approach this. How do you fund your hobby? Have you heard of this concept of a hobby funding a hobby? Does it seem sensible and attractive to you? Or maybe there's something in it I don't see and you'd like to point it out to me? I'll be waiting for you in the comments. Take care.